Looking at Korea's economy in the first half through economic figures, the current situation and the changes we can expect in the second half. Creative economy, the key word for the new administration. We hear from Vice Minister Yoon Jong-rok of the Ministry of Science, ICT and Future Planning about the vision of Korea's creative economy. The key technology behind the next generation curved TV, the curved display. We introduce various possibilities of using this technology. Combining sanity and eco-friendliness at the same time. We find out about the global success of airtight glass container, glass lock. North Korea is planning a mass-scale tourism project. We unveil the situation of North Korea's tourism industry and development projects.
Hello, I'm Andrew Salmon and welcome to Bizline. Now, in today's show, we'll be taking a look at all the key economic data for the first half of 2013 to assess how the Korean economy did in the first half. But we'll also be looking ahead into the future, and we'll be looking at the creative economy as we speak to the Vice Minister of Science, ICT and Future Planning. But as always, before we go to those features, we'll be taking a look at all the breaking business and economic stories hitting the headlines across South Korea this week.
Korea will likely collect $7.9 billion less in tax revenues in the first half of this year. According to National Tax Service, the government collected $72.8 billion worth of taxes from January to May this year, which is only 41.3% of the targeted $177 billion for this year. President Park Geun-hye ordered drastic regulatory reforms and emphasized the need for a permanent system through which regulations can be evaluated and amended. It was after President Park said it is important to create an environment in which companies feel they can trust government policy enough to invest, especially at a time when there are looming uncertainties both inside and outside the country. The government is planning to change its regulatory system for construction in designated areas. The government is also aiming to attract some 10 trillion won, or nearly $9 billion in new investment, by getting rid of 5 major regulations that have blocked massive business projects in the country. The unemployment rate ticked up slightly to 3.1% in June. But in the same month, the nation added the largest on-year job creation since October of last year. The employment rate for workers aged 15 or older stood at 60.5%, edging up 0.1% from a year ago. Analysts say last month's job growth may have been a temporary byproduct of new government measures to boost the country's health and social welfare service sectors, which added 140,000 jobs in June. The government plans to pump more money into science and technology R&D over the next 5 years. A total of nearly $80 billion will be funneled in that direction during President Park Geun-hye's 5 years in office, in line with her vision for a creative economy. It is the first time that an administration's R&D plans have addressed creating new industries and jobs, on top of investing in science technologies. New data shows Koreans spent the third most amount of money in communication bills among OECD member countries. The bills include different types of connections, including mobile and internet service. Topping the list was Japan, with the average household spending at $160, and second was the US with $153, while the Korean average household spent $148.
There are reams of economic data which can be used to paint a portrait of a national economy. But what are the key issues? What are the key indices? Here on Bizline, we will cut to the chase as we focus down on the core economic data to assess South Korea's economic performance in the first half of 2013.
Major economic data that can be used to measure South Korea's economic performance in the first half of 2013 has been released, the latest being employment data from Statistics Korea. Others are trade and consumer prices. So how did the country do in the first 6 months of the year? And what should people expect in the second half of 2013? The employment data for the month of June showed that the seasonally adjusted unemployment rate remained at 3.2% for the second month in a row. People with jobs increased slightly to more than 2.5 million to an employment rate of 60.5%, an increase of 0.1 percentage points from a year earlier.
실업률보다는 실제 취업자 수의 증감이 훨씬 더 중요한데 어쨌든 최근 상황은 부양책들이 좀 나오고 해서 약간은 개선이 됐고요. 제조업보다는 경기에 좀 민감한 서비스 섹터에서 일부 고용 증가가 확인된 그런 상황입니다.
The number of people with jobs is beginning to pick up, while the data reflects government policy 3 to 6 months after being implemented. Thus, the situation is expected to improve further later this year.
지금 최근에 1, 4분기가 저점으로 봤을 때는 적어도 3, 4분기, 하반기 중간쯤 이런 고용 효과가 고용에서 좋은 개선 효과가 나타날 것으로 보입니다. 1년의 정부 정책이 고용 정책 및 투자 정책이 추진되고 있지만은 그러한 정책들이 어떤 효과를 보려면 적어도 올 연말 정도는 돼야 고용 시장에 조금 플러스 요인으로 작용할 것 같습니다.
As the job market condition is expected to improve further in the coming months, people looking for jobs are getting more hopeful.
하반기부터 경제가 다시 좋아지려고 하는 것 같으니까 희망을 갖고 계속 취업 준비를 하려고 합니다.
요즘에 대기업들이 취업의 문을 많이 열어놔서 저희가 꼭 대학을 가지 않더라도 바로 대기업에 취업할 수 있는 길이 많아서 참 좋아진 것 같습니다.
Things are looking to be on a good path on the domestic side, while overseas-related activities remain favorable to South Korea. Trade data released by the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy showed that the country maintained a trade surplus for 17 consecutive months until June, with $5.6 billion on the back of exports of $46.7 billion and imports of $41.2 billion. For the first 6 months in 2013, trade surplus totaled $19.6 billion, a jump of 80% from the same period a year earlier.
예, 한국의 상반기 무역 수지 흑자가 전년 동기 대비해서 한 80% 정도 늘어나 있는 상태입니다. 하반기에도 수입이 상대적으로 좀 더딘 상태가 좀 지속될 것 같고요. 대신에 수출은 3, 4분기까지 좀 부족하다가 4, 4분기쯤 되면 좀 회복세를 띌 것으로 예상을 하고 있습니다. 그래서 무역 수지 흑자, 대규모 흑자 기조는 하반기에도 좀 지속되는 모양새일 가능성이 높겠다라고 판단하고 있습니다.
The low inflation rate helped South Korean consumers as well, amid slow recovery in the first half. Consumer prices remained on the 1% level. This was good news for consumers wanting to spend less until the economic condition improved further.
물가는 안정된 거를 피부로 느끼고 있거든요. 저희가 매일매일 들어오는 재료비를 보면 알 수 있는데 빨리 물가 안정된 거에 반해서 지갑도 많이 풀었으면 좋겠습니다.
And prices are expected to remain stable for some time.
하반기에도 상당히 낮은 인플레는 지속이 될 것 같습니다. 최근에 국제 유가가 좀 올라가고 그런 부분이 있기 때문에 하반기에는 상반기보다는 약간은 더 높아지는 정도, 그래서 1%대 중반에서 후반 정도까지는 올라갈 수 있겠다 이렇게 판단하고 있습니다.
Overall, the picture didn't look so grim in the first 6 months of the year, and the Bank of Korea decided to hold its key interest rate at 2.5% for the month of July. The central bank is expected to maintain its low rate to support growth as inflation is not an evident problem. However, things are not all well just yet. There are hurdles to overcome, and government policies that were implemented in the first half need time to take a full effect.
수출입 데이터를 보면은 수입은 계속 감소하고 있는 가운데 수출은 전년비 상반기 전체적으로 전년비 0.6% 증가했기 때문에 거의 정체된 상황이다라고 말씀드릴 수 있고요. 고용 동향을 보면은 1, 4분기 대비해서 2, 4분기의 고용이 조금 더 증가하는 모양새를 보였습니다. 그래서 금리 인하 또는 이제 추경 집행 이런 것들로 인해서 내수 경기가 약간은 개선되는 모양새가 조금씩 확인되고 있다 이렇게 말씀드릴 수 있습니다.
So what should people expect in the second half? And when will South Korea start to show a strong indication of growth? Recovery in consumer and business sentiments looks to hold the key.
예, 정부가 뭐 추경을 시작으로 해서 금리나 그리고 부동산 대책 그리고 고용 그다음 투자 대책 등 일련의 대책을 추진하고 있는데 가장 큰 목표가 경제 주체들의 불안 심리 완화를 한다는 것인데 어떤 작은 부분에서 가시적인 성과가 나온다면 경제 주체, 가계, 기업들이 조금씩 불안 심리가 완화된다면 소비를 더하고 투자를 더하고 고용이 더하는 이러한 경제 선순환 고리가 형성될 어떤 가능성은 뭐 하반기에 들어서 크다고 보입니다.
The second half of 2013 is definitely going to be better than the first half, and the market is likely to show a sure sign of recovery from the latter part of this year, along with monthly released economic indicators such as employment, trade, and consumer prices.
Even before she took office in February, President Park Geun-hye was talking up the importance of the creative economy. But what is the creative economy exactly? It seems to mean pretty much anything to anyone. Moreover, why is it so important? Well, the control tower of the creative economy under the administration is the Ministry of Science, ICT and Future Planning. We have with us today Vice Minister Yoon Jong-rok, who will hopefully make everything crystal clear. Minister, thank you very much for joining us on Bizline.
It's my pleasure.
Okay, well, we'll see about that. But let me put you on the spot. You were one of the key players in talking up the term creative economy on the campaign trail. What exactly does this term creative economy mean?
Many people say creative economy is quite confusing. I know, and I agree that. But the reason why everybody expects the exact solutions of any questions, and we are educated like that. But I think as far as the creative economy concerned, I don't think there is an exact one answer.
Well, what's your answer then?
So my point is we don't have natural resources at all.
Right.
And the economic situation throughout the world is getting worse and worse. So that's why we need some special paradigm. So creative economy is a special paradigm for Korean economy. And the reason why is that we don't have natural resources, so we have to cultivate our creativity. So instead of no natural resources, we have a huge amount of human resources. That's the point. So we have to create more values from our science and technology, and furthermore we have very strong ICT infrastructure. So those two elements are very important for our next decades of economy. So creative economy is kind of creating new job and creating new business model on top of science and technology.
Yes. And science and tech. Okay, now obviously ICT is part of your ministry's title. Why is ICT so critical? And also when you're talking about ICT, why ICT? Why not just IT?
If we consider agriculture, we need seed and very fertile soil, right? Those two elements are very important. Just like that, creative economy also we need seed and very fertile soil. As far as the seed is concerned, we have to create seed based on our imagination combined with science and technology. So if we get a seed, we have to plant it on the very fertile soil. But from the creative economy's viewpoint, we need very different soil. I think it's a ICT soil. But very fortunately, Korea is very fertile ICT infrastructure. So we have two requirements for creative economy. Very creative seed based on science and technology, and we have very strong ICT. So that's why ICT is very crucial for the creative economy. So compared to IT, traditional IT, what's different ICT? The point is IT itself is an industry, IT industry, but if it's combined with C, like a communication, information communication technology, and then ICT could be combiner between different two industries.
Okay, gotcha.
Right? That's why ICT and IT is a little bit different.
Okay, but you're talking about a seed. I mean, what exactly is the seed? The human resources? Is the seed the capital? Is the seed the the legal environment for business? What actually is the seed you're talking about here?
To create a new business model or to create a new value, we need some valuable ideas, right? So imagination is very important. So any kind of innovation comes from very primitive imagination. But imagination itself is not enough. Eventually it has to be combined with science and technology. But traditionally our economy has been very dependent on science and technology.
Yeah.
But the difference in creative economy is not only for the science and technology, but also we combined imagination. So as far as the science and technology is concerned, only 1% of our people are involved in research and development. But how about 99% of other people? They, even though they are not involved in science and technology, they have very creative imagination. So that could be a very important, tool for the creative economy.
Okay, so talking about incubation of and growing seeds. I mean, the South Korean economy has traditionally been very top heavy. It's been very, very strong in hardware, infrastructure, manufacturing, very, very weak in software, particularly the services sector. Can this be changed? Should it be changed?
Absolutely. I mean, for the creative economy, we need two requirements. The first one is software-oriented society. The next one is globalization. So I think those two elements are very, very crucial for the creative economy. And as far as the hardware and some kind of industrial economy is concerned, Korea is quite good at. For example, in automobile, we are about ranking 5 throughout the world, and the IT industry within 2 or 3. But as far as the software is concerned, our ranking throughout the world could be maybe within 200 or so. So we have to cultivate those software-related industries. So that's why we are going to provide some very special program for our young generations. Especially for elementary school students. A couple of years ago, we taught English class to the elementary school because English is, 21st language.
The global language.
But not only for the English, we think we have another language for the 21st century. That's a software language or computer language. So we are going to provide very interesting and very easy to accept way of software tools via internet. So probably we are going to provide that solution before the winter vacation to our Korean elementary school.
So this software solution is going to be provided to all elementary schools nationwide?
Yes.
Okay.
So within probably 5 years later, if they go to college later, and then they could be very strong at the software language throughout the world. I think that my imagination on that program is they generate dynamics to the software industry, and just like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, we can expect 5 or 6 kids every year for the challenging next generation.
Good luck. Let's hope it happens. But let's talk about the IT or the ICT sector. I mean, again, traditionally it's a very, very top-heavy industry here in Korea. You've got some extremely competitive companies: Samsung Electronics, LG Electronics, and so forth. But what you don't have so much compared to, say, somewhere like Silicon Valley is the smaller companies, the small, nimble, fast-moving tech ventures. You've talked about education and human resources. Let's talk about capital and business landscape. What kind of policies will you be promoting to improve the playing field for the small venture companies?
The venture capital and the venture entrepreneurs are very crucial for the Korean economy because our traditional industrial economy is not growing anymore. As a consequence, the job chance is not growing anymore. Right. So we have to create and add it to the existing economy. That's the best way to create and add those volumes to our existing economy is entrepreneurship. So that's why we are going to encourage our young generation to challenge startups. Last month, we announced a very big project to encourage our young generation via financial support. Traditionally, probably 10 years ago, our government also supported that kind of program, but very unfortunately, that program was supported by government. But this time, we are going to support that kind of financial program, the civil area, instead of government sector. Yeah.
Okay.
Just like Israel, if they have a great chance, I mean, if they succeed in some startup business, and then they invest some money to the market, like that, they have very natural ecosystem.
Creates a virtuous circle. Okay, well that's interesting. Now, of course, the government also has recently announced its 3.0 action plan. What is your ministry as part of that plan?
Many people knows about the cloud computing service, right? And also big data. So some data, if we collect very valuable data, and then eventually that data could be quite meaningful value. So
information is power. Sure.
Yeah. So actually, the government sectors, they have huge amount of data, but mostly those data are not released. So they cannot utilize those solutions. So the government 3.0 is going. We are going to, based on that analogy, we are going to release any kind of public data, government-owned public data, to utilize our to utilize those data for the special business model. So that could be create many business models, and also that could be a good chance for expanding our employment.
Okay. I mean, as a journalist, I'm very much in favor of open information, open data. But in terms of the economic effect this is going to have, how do you see that actually working to create new businesses?
Data is very good resources, just like labor or some kind of capital. In 21st century, data is another good resources for creating business model. So if we release some data, for example, the data for transportation, related data, and then we can utilize those data for our customers. For example, in bus stop area, we can expect the next bus stop will be by
what time is good? Based on past data, you can. Okay.
So that kind of application could be one example.
Yeah.
So if we release many different data, not only for transportation but education related or personal,
health,
related, and then we can utilize those data for good business model.
Okay.
So for example, in the weather condition related data, in government we have huge amount of weather related data, but they have never released those data for public. But if they release, we can utilize any kind of different.
You mentioned earlier on the Israeli model. Now, I understand that when you were teaching, when you were a professor at Yonsei, this was one of your key points. You were lecturing, you were talking up the Israeli model, and I think you've said even that Israeli is the last country left that is still worth benchmarking. Talk us through that a little bit. What can Korea learn from Israel in terms of public or private sector?
Actually, 3 years ago, I translated a book. It's a startup nation into Korean. At that time, I was very impressed on how they can, encourage the young generations to create new business, right? So I was very impressed on that, and I delivered those stories to our young generations, and also I delivered it to our new president. And the point is, they don't have natural resources at all. They have only 400 millimeters of rain throughout the year. But they made a very, they made a very successful agricultural industry, and also they create startups every year. The same number of total amount of European generate, right?
Sorry, say that again. There are as many startups in Israel as all of Europe.
Yes.
Really? Okay.
So I was very impressed.
Yeah.
Because they don't have natural resources. They challenge against new business model or entrepreneurship. So that's why we have to follow that kind of new concept, because we don't have natural resources at all. So I strongly suggest to our young generation, we have to challenge for the creating new business. So I think we have to make clear difference. The first one, business opening. Business opening is not the creating anymore. So instead of just opening, we have to create and challenge for new business model that have never been on Earth, right? So that's why we can add or we can expand our economy, and as a consequence, we can expand our job chance.
Minister, as I'm sure you're aware, the Koreans have sometimes been called the Irish of the East, or even the Italians of the East. But after what you were just saying and suggesting, one thinks of the Israeli people, the Jewish people in particular, as being very family-oriented, very respectful of education. And of course the Jewish people have got a long history of facing some pretty horrific challenges and attacks from outside. So perhaps in some ways very similar to the Koreans.
I was very surprised of their situation in Israel. I think everybody say they have very clever brain, and they are good at the education, and also they have very strong religious collaboration. But those three elements are not enough for the innovation. The important one is their characteristics, right? So-called chutzpah. Under the concept of chutzpah, they have many different elements like informality, questioning authority, crossover, measure, or learning from failure, something like that. So that makes young generation to challenge new business model. So that's why the Israel, they have only 7.5 million people. They generate more or less than the total number of European.
In terms of startup companies?
In terms of startups, yes.
Okay.
So that's why our young generation in Korea are also expected to challenge against very crucial economic environment throughout the world.
Okay. So you're suggesting that perhaps Korean youth should be more bold, audacious, and take more risks. Well, that's a good point to end on. Minister, thank you very, very much indeed for being on Bizline. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you. Not at all. I don't know what kind of TV you're watching me on right now, but over the last couple of months, the big players, LG and Samsung, have released their latest models onto the market. Now, the key selling point here is the gentle concave curve in the screens. What this does is grant a broader vista and apparently immerses the viewer more in the experience. These curved screens also have a wealth of future possibilities. What are those possibilities? Let's take a look.
Both Samsung Electronics Company and LG Electronics Incorporated recently rolled out OLED TVs in the market. The OLED TV that costs as much as the price of a compact car employs a curved display, which makes it special compared to conventional television sets.
시청자가 어느 위치에서 보더라도 생생한 입체 화면을 즐길 수 있는 완벽한 화질의 무결점 TV입니다.
With the launch of the OLED TV, the display industry is about to embrace new revolution. Following recent major leaps in display technology, thin liquid crystal displays offering vivid pictures successfully replaced cathode ray tube screens that had dominated the TV display sector for nearly 80 years. See-through screens like glass and 3D displays realizing stereoscopic images have also been developed. Among those display technologies introduced lately, a curved display used in the OLED TV is believed to wow the world the most. Flexible display technology is the next generation new display technology that is expected to lead a paradigm shift in the display industry.
플렉서블 디스플레이는 그 휠 수 있는 그 기판에 만들어집니다. 그러니까 예를 들면 얇은 유리라든가 아니면 얇은 그 금속판이라든가 아니면 플라스틱에 만들어지고 그 위에 기존의 디스플레이처럼 LCD나 OLED, 전자종이 같은 그러한 소자들이 올라와 있는 상태입니다. 이 중에서 특히 그 기판 중에서는 반복적으로 쓸 수 있는 그 플라스틱 기판이 유리하고, 다음에 디스플레이 면에서는 가장 얇은 OLED 디스플레이가 가장 유망하다고 볼 수 있습니다.
Samsung Electronics has been marketing its Youm flexible display technology since it unveiled a flexible display prototype during CES 2013, which was held earlier this year in Las Vegas. Apple Incorporated is also known to have applied a patent for its flexible display technology, enabling a device to be rolled, and has been rumored to use a flexible display on the next generation of the iPhone series. Display Bank, a display industry research and consulting group, forecasts the flexible display market will grow at a compound annual growth rate of 226% to $42 billion or about 47.2 trillion won by 2020 in terms of revenue. What triggered such high expectations for flexible displays? Because flexible displays are made from plastic, not glass, it is light and unbreakable. Also, it enables devices to be rolled up or foldable. Flexible electronic components are required to produce a display with a certain level of resolution that does not break when force is applied to it. But flexible electronic devices are produced in the same manufacturing processes applied to conventional rigid displays. Such process is not suitable to processing of a pliable substrate used in a flexible display and increases production costs, which makes it difficult for commercialization.
휘어지고 얇은 그러한 그 산소나 습기를 막을 수 있는 그러한 레이어를 만드는 것도 상당히 지금 난점을 겪고 있고요. 처음에 만든 직후에는 잘 동작이 되는데 반복적으로 이제 휘고 접고를 반복하다 보면 아무래도 그 기계적으로 손상이 일어나서 그 성능이 저하가 되게 됩니다. 그래서 수명을 좀 늘리고 신뢰성을 높이는.
But a team of Korean researchers developed a groundbreaking technology that can foster commercialization of flexible displays. The researchers introduced a new inkjet printing technology for flexible electronic devices on advanced materials, an internationally renowned scientific journal in the materials science.
유연한 기판을 딱딱한 기판에 붙여가지고 그래서 공정을 하고 나중에 다 완제품이 완성됐을 때 떼어내는 그런 방법으로 공정을 하고 있는데, 이것은 기판을 붙였다가 떼었다 하는 두 가지 부수적인 공정이 더 필요하게 되고, 또 그런 와중에서 소자의 실패라든지 소자의 망가짐 등이 많이 일어나게 됩니다. 종이 위에 신문을 인쇄하듯이 그렇듯이 인쇄 공정을 이용해서 유연한 기판의 재질을 그대로 살리면서 어디에 붙였다 떼었다 하지 않고 바로 공정할 수 있는 이런 공정을 개발한 것이 특징이 되겠습니다.
The technology uses a special ink in a conventional inkjet printer for industrial use. It is expected to lower costs and simplify the production process of flexible electronic devices, along with mass production of the special ink, as it has become common to use an inkjet printer at home at an affordable price. In addition, it is possible to improve performance of electronic devices by as much as 10 times higher than conventional flexible electronic circuits by inserting a special layer that enables easy injection of electric charge, which is a new technique.
플렉서블 디스플레이 안에 디스플레이 화소를 구동할 수 있는 트랜지스터를 만들어야 하거든요. 그 트랜지스터에 직접 적용될 수 있고요. 또한 플렉서블 디스플레이에 다른 여러 가지 칩들, 회로들 이런 것들도 전부 다 플렉서블 해야 되거든요. 그런 칩들을 만드는 기술들을 현재 저희 또 개발하고 있는데 그 기술들에도 향후 적용될 수 있을 것으로 생각하고 있습니다.
Backed by the rapid technological advancement, it is expected to commercialize curved displays within a few years by lowering costs and improving durability. The OLED TV recently released in the market applies a flexible display model, which is bendable but unable to change a form factor. Before 2016, it is expected to commercialize mobile devices such as smartphones, tablet PCs, slate PCs, and e-books in various new forms that employ rollable and foldable displays.
기존의 그 TV라든가 모바일 기기 외에도 뭐 예를 들면은 뭐 휘어지는 광고판이라든지 아니면은 그 윈도우에 붙일 수 있는 어떤 그 벽지형 디스플레이라든지 주머니에 넣고 다니다가 필요할 때 이렇게 펼쳐볼 수 있는 그러한 두루마리형 디스플레이 이런 것들이 이제 등장을 하게 되겠고요. 이런 것들은 새로운 응용 분야를 많이 만들어갈 수 있을 것으로 생각이 듭니다.
A display is no longer a mere apparatus used to show images, but a door to a new world. What the flexible display could bring to our lives within a few years might be unimaginable.
What kind of containers do you have in your kitchen? Would I be correct if I guessed plastic? Well, I've got some news for you. Glass containers are actually much more hygienic, but of course, glass containers tend to be heavier and they're easy to break. Well, in our Hidden Champions segment, we'll be meeting the manufacturer of the world's most popular glass containers. Containers which are not only strong, but are also eco-friendly. Let's take a look.
What type of container do you use to preserve food? Are the containers inside your refrigerator and cabinet clean and safe for the family? The key to preparing tasty food for the family is cooking with good ingredients. The most important part is to keep the ingredients in a clean and fresh state. There are numerous kitchenware products at large supermarkets. Here, consumers find various airtight containers in all kinds of brand names. Which airtight container brand do housewives use these days in order to preserve food items?
저희 집에 아기가 있는데 아기를 키우다 보니까 아무래도 좀 음식 같은 거 하더라도 그릇 같은 거 신경을 안 쓸 수가 없더라고요. 그래갖고 유리 용기 제품을 한번 찾으러 왔어요.
크기도 다양하고 친환경 제품이라 일단 안심이 되고요. 저희 가족들에게 건강한 음식을, 건강한 식탁을 딱 차려서 줄 수 있을 것 같아서 좋습니다.
We visited one household. Almost all ingredients and food items are stored in glass-type airtight containers. This housewife says she has used all types, from plastic to ceramic containers, but she highly recommends the glass airtight containers out of all products she's used.
플라스틱에서는 색도 배고 냄새도 나고 하는데 이거는 뜨거운 음식을 담아도 좋고요. 먹다 남은 과일 보관하기도 좋고 그리고 냉동실에 있는 음식도 바로 전자레인지에 해동할 수 있어서 좋아요.
유리 소재 식기는 규사 등의 천연 소재와 재활용된 파유리를 사용하여 자원 재활용성을 높일 수 있고 제조 시 발생하는 탄소 배출량을 감소시킬 수 있는 친환경 소재라는 게 가장 큰 장점입니다. 특히 주방용기로 사용 시 색이나 냄새 배임이 없고 친환경 소재이므로 반찬을 담아 오래 보관하기 좋으며 뜨거운 음식을 담아도 유해 물질이 발생하지 않은 것으로 알려져 있습니다.
Samgwang Glass is the mother company of Glasslock, the well-known airtight glass container brand. It has been the leader in the glass industry for the past 46 years as a company that specializes in making glass-related products. The glass products are made in one of the largest factories in Asia and are positioned as #1 in the domestic glass container market thanks to the company's original technology. Glasslock is the representative product of Samgwang Glass and has paved the way for airtight glass containers in the domestic market, garnering a lot of attention as a new category in kitchenware.
과거에는 사람들이 그냥 담는 용기로서 플라스틱이든 도자기든 스테인리스 스틸이든 이런 제품들을 많이 썼는데 그런 제품들의 특징이 한결같이 환경 호르몬에 노출될 위험성이 있거나 혹은 내용물이 보이지 않는 단점이 있습니다. 그러나 유리로 만든 밀폐용기는 안에 내용물이 잘 보이고 그리고 고온에서 만든 그 제품이기 때문에 환경 호르몬이 전혀 용출되지 않는 장점이 있습니다.
Glasslock is made with its licensed heat-resistant strengthened glass manufacturing technology. This allows the glass material to withstand more shock than regular glass under a high heat of over 120 degrees Celsius. As a result, the containers can be put straight into the microwave and onto a plate. The strengthened glass container does not leave a scratch and seals all sides with an outstanding ability to block air and moisture from the outside. Glasslock has become popular amid the recent issue of endocrine disruptors and a Glasslock product that proves to be the safest item that avoids harmful sources. Glasslock is made from the natural recycled material, soda lime glass. It took the company a long period of time to create this eco-friendly product.
1시간에 7,200개, 1초에 2개씩 전 세계에서 팔려나가고 있는 아주 각광받는 아이템인데 저희 글라스락을 개발한 것은 지난 2000년경부터 약 5년간에 걸쳐서 무수한 시행착오를 겪으면서 개발을 완료했습니다. 그 개발 동안 가장 어려웠던 부분은 꾸준한 품질과 대량 생산입니다.
The effort paid off for Glasslock when it was awarded with the grand prize of the year in the brand category, sweeping awards at home and abroad as the world premium item and Korea's first brand. Glasslock is exported to 83 countries around the world, including the United States, Canada, Australia, and Germany, marking itself as a global brand. Sales for Samgang Glass had been increasing every year, thanks to growing market share of Glasslock products in the global market. Glasslock's future looks bright, with growing worldwide consensus about safety and eco-friendly products.
최근에는 플라스틱 용기들도 환경 호르몬을 방출하지 않는 소재로서 개발을 많이 하고 있지만 유리 소재는 근본적으로 환경 호르몬을 나타내지 않는 물질이기 때문에 안전하고요. 향후 이제 재활용 측면이나 이 제조 시 탄소가스 발생 양의 감소가 가능한 소재이기 때문에 그런 환경적인 문제가 없는 소재로서의 향후 사용이 크게 증가할 것으로 예상이 됩니다.
The process of making a container that stores food requires a lot of effort and research. The small glass container boasts prominent licenses and certificates and has created a wind of change in global kitchenware culture.
The summer vacation season is now upon us. If you're the kind of tourist who is not content sitting on a beach sipping pina coladas, there are a range of interesting and unusual things you could do. For example, you could go kickboxing in Thailand, you could go shark diving in South Africa, or how about visiting one of the world's least visited countries? While many tourists may balk at visiting a nation best known for dictatorial leadership, for nuclear weapons, and for human rights abuse, a range of companies are now offering tour packages to North Korea. In our North Korean segment, we'll be taking an inside look at what is a very offbeat tourism destination indeed.
Despite North Korea's hostile rhetoric and provocative actions, more and more tourists are visiting the Hermit Kingdom. In 2012, the number of Western visitors to North Korea was estimated at some 5,000, while the number of Chinese tourists reached as many as 61,000.
We've run tours through all the nuclear tests, all the crises, all the belligerents and all the, arguments on both sides. Everything like that has never affected any of our tours. In fact, maybe some people were more interested to go at that time because they thought, they could say, well, I was in North Korea in the middle of the tensions, in the middle of all the threats.
James Terrell visited the communist country twice, to the North Scenic Kumgang Mountain in 2006 and to the capital city of Pyongyang in 2009. He said the second trip was particularly memorable.
When we were there, it was the birthday of the anniversary of Kim Il-sung's birthday, April the 15th. So there was a lot of fireworks, people dancing in the streets. So there was a lot of festivities around that date. So that was quite memorable.
There are two peak seasons per year for travel to North Korea. The first is the smaller peak in April and May over the birthday of Kim Il-sung and Labor Day. The second peak begins in July and lasts until the middle of October, spanning the holidays of Victory Day to Party Foundation Day on October 10th. In addition, the North's famous Arirang festival usually takes place during this time.
It used to be that the shorter trips were most popular, the basic highlights of Pyongyang, see the Arirang show and then leave. But over the last 3 or 4 years, we've noticed a change of people really much more interested in the country, so they want to stay longer.
There are two types of destinations to choose from. One, Pyongyang and neighboring towns, Panmunjom at the DMZ and the scenic Kumgang Mountain. And the other, places along the North Korea-Chinese border.
변경 지역 같은 경우는 대부분이 차량으로 이동하기 때문에 무박이든지 1박 2일 코스가 맥시멈이에요. 최대예요. 일단 이제 북한으로 넘어가서는 거기서 준비한 차량을 가지고 그 인근 지역을 이제 뭐 여행하는 그 정도 수준이고, 일반 관광은 이제 아무래도 내륙으로 들어가는 거다 보니까 기차, 뭐 비행기, 아니면 이제 고급 유람선 이 정도 이런 부분들이 이제 주요 교통수단이다 보니까.
Some of the infrastructure is fine, and when you go to the remote areas, the infrastructure is much worse. The roads are much bumpier and so on, and a lot of the regional hotels have no hot water or they have power cuts all the time. But the thing is with North Korea, people's expectation is much worse than the reality.
Tourism in North Korea is highly controlled. Tourists must be with their tour guides at all times. There are also other restrictions on picture taking and on personal belongings.
I personally was okay with it because I knew that was the expectation. Some of the other tour group members were very curious and I want to see a supermarket, I want to see this, I want to see that. The guides took it nicely and did their best to try and accommodate that, but they still had a framework to work within.
It's like going on a school trip. You don't have to order your own meals or anything like that. You're told when to wake up. So it's very, you can retreat into comfort, basically, of not having to decide things for yourself. So a very North Korean type experience.
In principle, any person is allowed to travel to North Korea. Only South Koreans and journalists are routinely denied access. But from 1998 to 2008, they were able to take overland tours to Kumgang Mountain, and from 2007 to 2008 to the city of Kaesong. However, both tours were suspended due to a shooting of a South Korean tourist in the scenic mountain in 2008.
98년부터 이제 중단되던 당시까지 일단 방문한 수는 그 한 210만 명 정도라고 조사가 발표가 됐어요. 이제 계산을 하면 약 한 5억 달러 정도가 토탈 북한에 지불이 된 거로 알고 있어요. 근데 이 부분은 이제 최소 비용인 거고, 가서 뭐 식사라든지 추가 경비 들어가는 부분이 있지 않습니까? 그런 부분은 이제 북한에서 그 말 그대로 다 전체 흡수가 되는 부분이기 때문에 그 부분까지 한다면 뭐 최소 5억 달러에서 플러스 알파로 추정을 할 수 있을 것 같습니다.
On the same note, tour programs for Chinese alone are estimated to have raked in over $35 million last year.
북한으로 들어가는 이제 전체 외국인 관광객의 한 80% 이상이 중국 관광객으로 알고 있어요. 20% 미만이라는 숫자는 여전히 다른 나라에서 들어가는 관광객의 수치이기 때문에 이들로부터 들어가는 비용을 실제로 한다면 더 많은 것으로 예상이 되는 거죠.
Tourism is the industry exception from international sanctions, which have severely harmed the influx of North Korea's much-needed foreign currency. And that is why the Stalinist state is currently known to be encouraging and is expected to actively promote tourist programs. But skepticism lingers over the future of the North Korean tourism industry. Despite curiosity about the most secretive country in the world, there is still too much for visitors to endure, from poor infrastructure to heavy restrictions and security threats.
And that is all we have time for on Bizline this week. But do join us next week. We'll be travelling to Laos to meet some South Korean volunteers taking part in corporate social responsibility activities in that nation. I'm Andrew Salmon. This was Bizline. Thanks for watching. We'll hope to see you next week. Goodbye.